So with the ulna and radius, or ulna, it's pretty easy because real easy access to the ulnar electroneural process, and real easy access to the distal end where the right that knob at the end, the start of the process. So you can just get easy access, just like the malleolus and the tibia and fibula. They're fairly easy bony access for the ulna at least. The radius is a little more. So basically, you get location, back off, sink in slowly, feel skin, superficial fascia, slick sliding surface, or the bone. There's the density of the bone. Get back to that slick sliding surface, periosteum. Hang out with that. See what happens. Sometimes she's getting a little pull together, like they're coming towards each other. Drift. And a little sheary twist. And a little creaky at the elbow, and a creaky now at the wrist. A little sheary twist.
Yeah, that feels pretty funny.
Yeah. It's an odd sensation. Most people don't have a lot of experience with it because most of the time nobody. There's a little buzziness at the elbow. Like a vibrating kind of buzz. And a little twitch response at the wrist. What's fun about it is there's so much mobility possibility at the hand compared to the foot and the tibia and fibula. Those are stabilizing bones. They take a lot of pressure and force. These are moving bones, so they oftentimes move pretty quick in comparison. So I can just hang out with that. She's getting some nice glide and slide and shift happening. So I know we've got this bone woken up good, and then she's getting articulating, kind of ratcheting at the wrist. There she goes. So even though I'm working with the ulna, she's getting response all the way out into that carpal, and I can and that soften something just with soften, kind of like, yeah, buttery, melty kind of feel.
Yeah.
Bigger motion. Okay, so I can keep going, but I don't need to. Got that nice buttery shift. So with the radius, I have to hold it so you can find the ulna, slide up. You feel a little knobbiness of the radius. Make sure it's not the humerus, so you want to come a little bit more on the forearm so you're sure you're on the back side of that radius. And then you scoop your fingers on the inside just like we're going to that supinator. So you get into that soft spot and you're going to curl in from that. But instead of going to the interosseous membrane, you're going to go right to your thumb. So I can find my finger and thumb with my eyes closed. So I set my thumb up as the target. How do I bring my finger to my thumb? And what I'm going to run into is the density of the bone. Okay? And there I'm starting to feel that density underneath the medium tissue that I'm pushing up against it. Now I'm sinking a little further in, just kind of shrink in. On the back, I'm clearly at bone density already. I'm just waiting for the inside finger to catch up to that. There. She already started to react. Just as I'm getting to it, she started to react. And then I, again, hold the same thing over on the distal end. Just grab the bone near the wrist on that radius. I'm going to shift just a little bit so I'm better lined up with my shoulder. There we go. Sink in, get that skin, superficial fascia, slidey, glidey, periosteum. If you're already there, you don't have to find the bone. You can just sit into that, and she's already getting some ratchety, picky response. There's a little slidey glide, hold, and then there's ratchety movements. And then a little slidey glide, hold. Slidey glide, twist. Now, she's twisting in that direction at the wrist and this direction at the elbow. So she's getting some interesting twist, and it's getting a lengthening feel. The other side felt like it came together. This one feels like it's lengthening apart. Some interesting, peaky, shifty response. Anything you're noticing about it?
It feels weird.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rotating kind of happening in the wrist, and I can sort of, it feels like rocks grinding together sometimes. It goes
Yeah, she's really rotating. So I'm getting a lot of activity happening down the carpals. So I can go right down to the carpals at this point in time and do some decompressing at that wrist and the joint. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So here's the moves kind of thing. If you get your fingers on the little knobs at the wrist, the pisiform edge and the hook of the hamate, Those are the two bones that retinaculum attaches to. So I just sit with I tend to use my middle fingers there so that I can wrap my other fingers around the rest of the hand and have these two to feel the wrist. So you can see that kind of a position like that. On the inside or the outside of it, I want to find where the crease is. Here's the radius and ulna, slide up. There's the little crease. Everything above that is carpals. Right there is. So I've got my thumbs right at the crease that is that radial ulnar carpal joint. Okay. So all I'm going to do is bring this arm into neutral. Okay. So line it up as best I can. Okay. Feel what's neutral for her. So no traction. This feels sort of neutral to her. So I hook my thumbs in a little bit as I traction down. So I just lean back. Okay. As I lean back, I follow. So what I'm noticing is my right hand is shearing up on the radius, and with my thumb and fingers are shearing towards me on the carpals. The left hand the thumb is staying fairly straight, but the fingers are shearing towards me, and there's a little twist at the finger side. So the fingers are kind of going in towards each other, sort of puckering in towards each other. Okay? So I now have some position things. If I lean this way, it opens a little bit more. So I want to go for that opening. If it didn't, I'd shift the other direction. So what I'm noticing is she's starting to extend a little bit, so I want to be able to keep the traction, follow it up into extension, keep the traction. She gave me more traction. I'm following it up into extension. I hang on. She's doing a little unwinding around this. My fingers are taking up the slack on the palmar surface. Now that means I can bring these other fingers to slide in right where the others left kind of slid off of, because she's sliding right off those hooks. This one and hook. She's giving a little slack. She's going into flexion, so I gave it a little flexion. I'm going to lift the arm to allow me to do that. That takes it into that flexion, that hooks it a little bit. There's a little shifting happening. I'm going to follow the shifting. She goes a little bit this direction. I'm keeping the traction through this whole process. Don't let the traction go. The traction is helping her to negotiate this relationship. Okay? There's some nice shifting. Sometimes you'll feel a little clunk. Sometimes it'll just be like a glidey kind of stuff is kind of shifting around a little bit. So we got a nice shift. There's a little something left on this thumb side and now she's opening out. She's opening out a little bit, opening out a little bit. Keep the traction there. She slides, twists back over. Okay, I did quite a bit, so I'm going to bring her back into neutral-ish, but her neutral is set. There we go. There's a neutral. And at that neutral, I'm going to let the traction off slowly. Okay. You want to tell us what that felt like? Yeah, she just shifted. As I just came back to neutral, there was a shift between radius and all that. Go ahead and move it around.
Yeah, the extensors don't feel like they're working anywhere near as hard on this side anymore. Yeah.
Mobility in the wrists themselves.
Yeah, no, this one is just. This is the S7. Sorry. Yeah, no. It felt like there was a lot more space, and I could feel like fascial tension going up from like kind of spiraling at my arm, and there's some really nice stretching in the neck too that was happening.
Yeah, and that traction really sends the dialogue of these carpals all the way up, because these carpals get stuck usually because of other things that are going on. And so if you don't engage the whole thing, I'm finding I didn't get the same results. That said, there are times when they may move right into a really different space. I'm going to just take it, I won't traction. But there have been times when I'm holding somebody and all of a sudden their arm's going over and over, and I've ended up like this, holding somebody. And then it shifts again, and I follow it back around, and it comes back to neutral, and then I might end up over here. So there are times when it may take you in some odd places. Don't be afraid to let yourself relax. Follow it up and over, and because it'll always come back around. It always. I haven't had one try and go all the way out, but just follow it. Don't be afraid. Just keep that little bit of traction. It's not like I'm harking her whole body down with traction.
Will you
I'm keeping
do
it.
on me how hard the traction is that you're doing?
Okay, so get my position, go into traction.
It's just enough that you're pulling on
Yeah,
the shoulder joint and all
yeah,
that there.
yeah.
but-
I'm
but
engaged
not-
all the way
yeah.
up to the shoulder, all the way to the neck, honestly.
Yeah,
But
it's just
I'm not-
sometimes your
I'm not
traction is
pulling.
like right.
Yeah, if I were to pull and do a real
Right.
that's a traction where a lot of people do. That's way too much.
But that's actually more than what I think you tend to do at the feet, right? Where you say, okay, traction meaning like really just the slightest little pull to feel
Yeah.
reaction, but this is more. Is that right?
It depends. So it may feel like more, but to me it feels similar. So it's just that these are heavier, so it doesn't always feel like I'm getting the same level of traction as this. When I get that same sense of traction, it may feel like it's more because these are smaller muscles and they're more responsive to it.
It's a lot more massive limb to spring into,
right.
yeah.
So I'm usually given quite a bit of traction on the leg. But is it an assessment traction versus this is not an assessment traction? So that might be where you might be getting a little difference.
Okay.
Because here I'm actually trying to engage it specifically for a therapeutic outcome, not
Okay,
just an
that's good.
assessment.
Yeah.
So it may feel a little bit more because I want to be sure of what I've got engaged.
Yeah, that's
But
the
that said, I
difference.
don't want to override with too much traction.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah. So that may be the
Yeah,
slight
because I was
difference.
thinking those assessment tractions where
Yeah.
you're just sitting there and
That's a
just
totally
initially
different
feeling-
sense of it.
Okay.
Because here I'm wanting to say I'm treating here, but I want to have it connect to all the relationships up there. So not just assessing what's up there. You got to have a dialogue here, folks. So, okay. So that's, you can do this for decompressing. You can do this as a general decompression for here. You can also do very specific. So if there's a particular finger, there's usually one of these is a little bit higher than others. Just, it's natural. There's always a little bit. But ideally, there should be mostly a gentle curve. If you've got one that's really sticking up, a carpal that's like really, so of these, this is the one that tends to be a little bit up. But I'm going to go ahead and basically put my thumbs on one side and fingers on the other to the opposite side of it, and just leverage right into the bones there. And just engage right to that bone and ask the tissue basically, okay, so what's going on with this one? And then what I might find is if there's a little draw in a particular direction, I'm going to check this out. So I'm sitting right at that carpal, and I know it's relating to this metacarpal. So I'm going to hold that carpal and this metacarpal. Okay? So check in first with the carpal. It has there's more metacarpal. So now I can work both the long metacarpal bone and the short carpal bone and the joint between the two. So I hold into each of the bones and see what happens. And sure enough, there's a nice little dialogue starting to happen already. It's like a kind of shifting, twisty kind of, and there's response elsewhere. So I'm just going to stick with this. So I can decompress individual bones as well as individual joints within the wrist and hand. So if this trailed out, and let's say this starts to shift a little bit towards the fingers. Yeah, it's going to the fingers, mostly the other fingers. So I may hold on to this metacarpal, because the carpal metacarpal space is changing. So I'm going to hold on to this metacarpal and go over to one of these two. These are the two that tend to like to hang together. So I'm going to kind of grab hold of both of them between. And I know there's the ligament right there. So I've got the bone with the right hand on 3 different points, my finger, thumb, and finger holding that index. And I'm going to put my thumb between the two bones and my finger between the two bones. So I've got both the ligament there and I've got both of those bones. Now I've got 3 bones that are lined up next to each other and saying, hey, what about y'all? So individually they're starting to have a response. So each bone is having a little response. And I can just hang with that, and then there's also a little tendinous shift happening. So I can decompress those individually relative to each other. So I can do metacarpal's relationship to each other, and I can also take it out metacarpal to phalange. For her, these two like to hang together. So, and what's interesting is it's all sort of swooping into this middle finger on the palmar side. So I could take that into the middle finger. So I'm going to grab that middle finger. And because it's curved, whenever you grab into a finger, try not to straighten it out. Always keep it at a slight curve. Unless it straightens on its own, she's curvy. So I'm going to tuck it in. I'm going to help it tuck in. Really tuck it in. follow that as she's tucked in. And sometimes you just hang on. So she stays tucked in. I stay with that metacarpal with the end finger and the others tucked in. She's slowing and shearing. She's renegotiating. And she's thinking about coming out a little bit, so I want to be ready. So it's coming out. I'm just going to hook onto that. Now I got this phalange and that metacarpal. So there's some interesting decompressing relationships through this hand. And when you can give the body some of this detail work, it can really make a big difference with hand functionality because we tend to overuse our hands in so many ways. See, now it stopped moving here, but where is it gone? So this is the base and it's hooking, it's kind of, the anchor is really letting that shift a little bit. How you doing with this? Anything you can speak to?
Yeah, it has a direct relation to the sternum, and it's making the pecs and stuff, and the rib cage kind of light up.
And what I'm noticing is my right finger is really scooped up into that palmar surface, right up into that space. So I'm going to follow right into there, into that web. So I'm going to just, right now I've got a finger on either side of the web, because that was easiest to slide over. But what I'm noticing is there's definitely if I scoop on the palmar side, I can hook into the dorsal side right into the web, and it drops me in and around there. So I start to work down between the metacarpals into that interosseous lumbrical space. Now I can bring my finger and thumb right into that interosseous lumbrical space with my left hand as I'm on the web, slid me off onto the posterior side of that web, and now we're working lumbrical interosseous for this finger. And I just grab hold of it gently with the other hand, just to hold on a finger that's close by.
But that's connecting to the wrong blade.
Huh. Were you driving when you were in the auto accident? Steering wheel.
Yep.
Steering wheel connection. And it's not uncommon to have one or two fingers that were really gripping or gripping and then released, depending on what was going on. So there's some interesting sort of fascial tissue shifting there. Now, what I'm noticing is the middle finger is less involved, so I'm going to go over to this ring finger and say, okay, you were close. Let me grab you into that shortened, see if that takes you. Sure enough, she goes to shorten. She really tucks into that shortened, grab hold of that, follow it in, wait for it to come out. She's thinking about it. It's starting to shift and you're listening.
Oh, eef. Pinky move.
Uh-huh.
Pinky. Ah.
Yeah, I can grab hold of that a little bit. Can I keep that one tucked? Ah, tuck and pinky. So I got the tucked one and I got the pinky extension. And now the tucked one's thinking about coming out. There it is. And I grab hold of it too. Just slip in and grab hold as best you can. The hands and fingers move in such fast ways, you just kind of give it your best grip. That seemed to be a nice shift for you. Now something's moving over to the thumb side. So let me go to the thumb side. Now I can stay in this lumbrical interosseous. It's kind of the main connection, and or I can check into the thumb. So check into the thumb. Ah. Now I got this. Let me go to the pinky because that was the last one that was really involved. I dropped my thumb right into that web space. She's sliding me right down between. Right in the lumbrical interosseous. She slid me forward. Now she's sliding me posterior. Same time I'm feeling pinky stuff and ring finger stuff. That's good. Slide right on in. She gives me a little slide towards the palmar surface on the thumb. Got my fingers over there. And she slid me right off onto the thumb. And thumb and pinky have a very interesting relationship because it's all strong oppositional stuff. So if you get into thumb and pinky, stay with them. You may be unraveling some of that tension across that arch.
My toes are on one.
Yay. And you don't need to pull it, you just hang on. And follow the tissue. There she goes. Everything's sort of softening and slowing. Okay. So I don't need to keep, as they say, beating the dead horse. Got it to move, start to slow and ease. I can acknowledge that in the body. Let it back off and let it settle. Her body's still going to process it. Okay? But that really opened up quite a bit of these metacarpal carpal stuff and these phalanges. But it also brought up that we got some thenar and hypothenar stuff. So this is where I have a friend that always would pull a pillow out, and she's called it the princess treatment. Put a pillow down on her leg and then start to come into the hands and do the individual details. But what's nice is when you lay the hand over, I have really easy access to this. I can grab this whole bundle of muscle, and I can kind of pinch it together a little bit without pinching, and just invite it to lift and roll and relate down to that retinaculum.
Excuse me.
And away from the retinaculum. And just follow it in. Think about lifting and pulling up and away. Most people, when they go in here, they find trigger points, which means they push down and compress. So what's nice is this is very mobile here. Right here, it's not so mobile. So I'm hanging on to that. I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to scoop on the outside of the bone, just like we did on the side of the foot. Scoop on the outside, scoop on the inside. I got that bundle. Now I got two bundles. You can see I can push them towards the retinaculum, which offloads the pressure in a whole different direction. And it starts a dialogue between those. There's creakiness starting to happen, especially on the thumb side. Carpal relationship with the bone muscle right there. Now she's shearing a little off in a twist. Gather a little bit more of that tissue. Wow, that shifted quite a bit. So I'm going to follow right into that. So you can really bunch it together. You can see as I bunched it together, she's taking me right in and up. Notice how blanched that palmar aponeurosis is. She's sliding me right onto that. So I'm going to scoop into that, invite that out. She sheared over. Whew, there we go. Thumb tucks in. I hope it. Follow it in. As it goes there.
There was like a, on the pinky side,
Yeah.
there was like pinchy creak.
Yeah. She's shearing. I just leave my thumb in there because I can't keep both of them in there. Space. Yeah. As soon as her body starts to quiet and settle, great. Back off. And not everybody is big as an unwinder, but these are the possibilities you may run into. So I checked into the thenar and hypothenar. I checked into the space on this web. I checked into the space on this web. You can go into each of the webs. You don't have to. Okay? For the fingers themselves, sometimes you'll tuck them because they roll in. Sometimes you'll hold them in, and if you hold them so that you've got a little bit of a curve in them, so here you can see I've got a little curve. If it extends out, it's easy to extend out. If it curls in, I can just get the rest of the fingers out and I still got a finger in there to follow the curve. Okay? So being able to be adaptable to that, but keeping it in that nice gentle hold. I do want to check into specific pieces around each of the, or at least one or two of these fingers. Mm-hmm. So the flexor slings are on the inside, and on the back you've got the lumbrical interosseae that create the sling on the back. So if I know that, I can just kind of slide up into this first metacarpal, or first phalange on the extensor side, and I can scoop in on the flexor side and see if there's a relationship between that extensor-flexor tendon balances. So I can just sink into that, see if there's anything there. Slide up as she lets me slide up. And there's not a lot of resistance there. But what I do feel is right out here on the end. So I'm going to go to these two bones, So I'm sitting into the tendon lines, front and back, flexor extensor tendons, and I can engage to the level of bone and tendon together and check it out. So I can get the phalangeal joint as well as the tendinous engagement. And if you can't hang on, just get out of the way and touch as best you can. And that's all it needs. There you go. Alright. So, we've had already some unwind, but it's not uncommon as you're dealing with fingers that you may have a finger or one or two or more that will take it into unwind further in the body. She's demonstrated that really clearly, so I didn't have to try and engage it. So at any time, this could end up. Now you notice at one point in time, I was walking over to the other side of the table. There have been times when I've started with hands. I do a shoulder unwind, it doesn't get so far, but when you get down to the hands, for some reason, they can sometimes get really big. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. I just find it interesting. There are times when I'm working with hand, next thing I'm over on the other side of the table, and their whole body's rolling over to that in response to that hand. So sometimes when you get out to these distal places where there's so much stored because of all these little activities, it may really open up something bigger. Okay? The other piece from an energetic perspective, I'm just going to add here, the palm, just like the base of the foot, but the palm right here is a minor chakra. And so it tends to be a place where there's a lot of easy access energetically. In different traditions, many of them have similar things. So one of the similarities is they speak of the right hand as being a hand that empties. And so I oftentimes think of it as like the drain. And that's the faucet for the inroad. So if you want, the left hand is the inroad for clearing, to send stuff in and clear out and drain out through the right. So it's not uncommon for, I've had many clients and just told me that idea, and it feels like everything's just running right out of my hand, kind of a thing. So just a gentle contact in that palm can be all it takes to get a little encouragement for that to drain and empty out to that side. If you want to hold that idea in your mind from that center.
Interesting perspective. I was thinking that sounded like opposite of what I learned, but what I learned was the perspective that from Reiki, that you're giving with this hand and receiving from this hand, but it's the same thing.
It's the same
You're
thing.
still going out.
What's coming out, what's coming in. Exactly, yeah.
So would you necessarily, like if you have somebody who can't say, oh, I'd like you to start on the left or right, you don't have obvious, would you necessarily want to start on the left because that's where things are coming in and have it go out the
Sometimes,
right?
yeah.
Or
If I perceive there to be a lot of debris energetically, I might start on the cleared again.
start on the right to
Yeah.
let it,
Create some space, kind of like emptying the front of the ferry so that you give us some force on the back and then we'll clear them more easily. So, yeah. So, how does that feel for you? When you tell us about what your experience with all that is?
This one feels really light. It feels like all the stuff is kind of transferred to my back, and
Yeah.
I'm noticing some scapular shifting with the rhomboids that wants to happen.
Let yourself do that. Yeah, wriggle into it. Exactly. And that's giving clients permission, encouraging them to do that. They can handle some of the self-treatment. Anything else?
I feel like the shimmy's shimmering some tension out of my core.
You had to unwind all the way down to your toes at one point.
Yeah, I don't know, it just kind of went right to the center and shimmied up and down.
Yeah.
It was mostly same side movement, but it was reminiscent of the car accident because when I hit, I pushed on the brakes and I pushed out with my hand as I tried to turn.
Yeah.
And this leg was
And the
pinched up
connection.
to support the movement, and that mirrored what was happening during the toe unwind.
Yeah. And that mirrors the movement that arm took.
Yeah, I was like, oh, let's finish that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And they speak to that idea, what animals do to unwind and unravel their story is they move back to that pattern to break it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
We're
pretty
all
cool.
just animals, man.
We
Yeah.
really are, though.
We are.
Yeah.
But I'm like, everything's connected, but really it is. Though.
So we got the thenar and hypothenar muscles. You got a little into palm. She didn't give me lift, but she gave me some shear that I could kind of hook into it based on the thenar and hypothenar muscle stuff. And she didn't have a lot up the extensor flexor tendon lines, but she definitely had something going on with the different joints and the tension in the flexions as she tucked in and then unraveled out. So if you follow that in, I used to think, oh no, don't go there, and I would try and stop it. And I thought, why am I doing that? Wait a minute. Started following it, and it's so much more productive to follow the body's lead, and especially because these hands will be so expressive. You know? So if you see one kind of tucking in, like, go with it. Follow that. Where does it go? And invariably, it'll take you into something, and then it'll bring you right out.
Yeah.
So, getting into the web, when you sit into the web, it'll shear dorsal or palmar. Whichever way it goes, just shear right with it. Don't be surprised at how deep you get in around the thumb. It's really fabulous. If you have somebody who has really specific, I'm going to borrow you.
Oh yeah.
If you have somebody with really specific pain right here in this joint, the saddle joint, hold that metacarpal and that carpal, and just give it a little bit of load towards the joint, as just a touch, as much as holding the bones, but load it a little bit towards the joint, and it'll start the dialogue right into that joint, which can be really helpful to unravel some of that. I'll do this for myself. I self-treat once in a while. Just grab whatever I can here on either side. So I'll put my thumb right at the joint, fingers on the other side, either side of the bone. And that can, once you get that started, you'll start to unravel it.
That released something in my neck here.
Well, if you put the theory of reflexology on it, this hand relates to the body. This is the neck right here. This is the head.
Cool.
Yeah.
Justification. Validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was also a point where my wrist was flexed and rotated.
Yes.
Where my triceps spasmed. And that's what sent the energy down into my back. And like, it's still there.
And if you have time and opportunity, you can hold on to that place where it triggered and then go and touch the other place and see if it'll release it out. And sometimes it will. Sometimes it'll escalate it first and then drop it. Because it's like, oh, I've been acknowledged. What do I do with this? Oh,
You noticed me once.
She saw me. He saw me.
Yeah.
The body loves to be acknowledged, and if you can give it that acknowledgement, sometimes it freaks them out a little bit. A moment of like, wait, nobody's ever paid attention. Wait a minute. And then